This is Ben with Cholinergic and in this video I'm going to tell you how I was able to overcome my hives. And for those of you out there who are still suffering, I'm going to give you some suggestions that you can talk to your doctor about and try to give you a way that you can get your hives under control. And one of the most common questions on the forum is, I don't know where to begin, or someone will ask something like, please help, I'm just struggling so much. So this video will pretty much summarize all the advice that I know to give you, and I hope that it helps you. First of all, I suffered with this for over 11 years, so I can definitely relate with you. For most of that time, it was very severe. My scalp would itch, my whole upper torso would itch, I would get itching and prickling all over my body. I could not sweat for most of that time. If I went outside and tried to mow my lawn, I usually couldn't, or I would have to stop. Even one summer, my wife pretty much had to do all the mowing and trimming because every time I stepped outside, it was horrible. I could never break a sweat. I would wake up in my sleep, breaking out in hives. If I had a dream or if it got too hot in the room or something like that, I would have to sometimes even run in the shower. I remember one time being sick, and because when you have a cold or something, sometimes your hives can get a little worse. And I remember just even having to go and jump in the shower one time because I was just sitting in bed and all of a sudden it just broke out. Had to go jump in the shower to try to cool my body down. And it was really horrible. It dominated my life. And it was one of the most worst experiences I've ever been through. I wouldn't even wish this on my worst enemy. And by the grace of God, I was able to find a way to get my hives completely under control to where I no longer break out. I don't have to take antihistamines, and I can sweat, I can exercise and so forth without the itching and prickling and all that. Now my hives can come back if I stray from my diet and if I don't do the things I'm going to talk about in this video. So in a sense, I'm cured, but in a sense, it's kind of like having poison ivy allergy or something. You know, I don't have a problem with it as long as I stay away, and my hives don't bother me as long as I stay on this strictly. But if I stray from it, they can come back. So what my line of reasoning was when I tried to overcome this was this. I looked at my past and I realized how my hives would fluctuate sometimes with my diet. Sometimes they would be more severe and less severe based on certain foods I was eating. I would also notice I would get those rashes that I talked about in another video, and stomach cramps and so forth. And when I would cut out certain foods, those rashes would clear up, and I knew that was causing the rashes. My hives would usually improve a little bit, but they would never totally go away. So I began to look at things like this. I said, I wonder if maybe I'm having some things in my diet and environment that's causing inflammation to build up in my body, and I kind of have this cumulative immune response that's there, and that's making my hives worse. And that if I could cut those out, my hives may improve to the point where they're still there maybe, but don't bother me as bad, or even go away completely. So that was my line of reasoning. So that's what I began to do. I began to examine my diet, and I have a whole video on allergy elimination diet and what my current diet is, so watch that. But I began to examine my diet, and I began to make changes and cut certain foods out and try different things. In addition, I began to look at everything that could possibly cause inflammation. I said, okay, diet's one. Another thing, visceral fat. I hadn't gained a lot of weight, but I actually weighed the most I'd ever weighed in my life, which is about 170 pounds, and I had a little bit of a pot belly. And that's visceral fat, and visceral fat can sometimes cause inflammation and make autoimmune conditions and so forth worse. So I said, okay, I'm going to get rid of the visceral fat. The third thing is exercise. Exercise can reduce inflammation in your body. So I said, okay, I'm going to start exercising regularly, and hopefully that'll do it. The next thing is I started to switch to hypoallergenic products. I thought, okay, is there anything I'm putting on my skin that could be causing hives or making them worse? Is there anything in my environment, anything at all that I can get rid of that would maybe make my hives better? So I went through and I did dust mite proof bedding. I switched to hypoallergenic soap and detergent, and I got a good lotion for my skin to help keep that moisturized, and did things like that. And then finally, I also got a water filter to help cut down on impurities and chlorine and stuff in the water, so that didn't irritate my skin. And on top of that, I also got a water pitcher with a filter in that to filter out the tap water. And then I also took some vitamins because I thought, well, maybe, I have some vitamin deficiencies. Some people have reported that if they took vitamin D3, for example, that they were deficient. Once they got their levels back up, that their hives improved or even went away. One or two people have reported that. And some people have reported some other multivitamins and so forth that have worked or helped them a little bit, like B6 and so vitamin B6 and so forth. So I said, okay, I'm going to get rid of every source of inflammation. I'm going to try to get on some supplements that I think maybe could help me. and I'm going to do this diet, and hopefully this will work. And well, by the grace of God, it did work. And that's what is really the game changer for my hive situation. So just to sum it all up again, what I do today, this is what I do. First of all, I eat my diet. I'll just real quickly, I eat turkey breast, white rice with maple syrup. I eat sweet potato, broccoli, bananas, blueberries, and strawberries. That's my main staple diet that I know is like a hypoallergenic diet for me that's going to not cause any allergic issues. I will sometimes eat other foods. I have a whole video, so watch that if you want the diet specifics, but that's what I eat. The second thing I do is I do take some supplements. I take a multivitamin, and there's different brands of multivitamins. I'm not associated with any particular brand. I use Centrum. That's just what I use. But I take a multivitamin to help with any nutritional deficiencies that I don't get from my diet. I take a calcium supplement, and the reason I do that is because I don't have any dairy whatsoever in my diet, and you do need some daily calcium, so I take a calcium supplement. On top of that, I will take probiotics sometimes. I don't take them all the time, but the reason I take probiotics, it helps with digestion, and most of your immune system is in your intestines, and so I try to put that good bacteria in there to help cut down on any inflammatory response from an overgrowth of bad bacteria. That's kind of my line of reasoning with that. And I use different brands, Culturelle, Align, Digestive Advantage. I'll sometimes switch it, and sometimes I'll even take a break. So those are the supplements I use, and that's the diet I do. On top of that, I do exercise. I usually do cardio about 3 times a week, usually for about 20 to 30 minutes, and sometimes I'll do about 20 minutes or so of exercise, of weightlifting after that. And again, I have a video on that if you want the specifics. I did the hypoallergenic product thing. I've done dust mite proof bedding, and the reason that I did that is because a lot of people have high allergic response to dust mites that have this disorder. I've done the water filter in the shower, the water filter in the pitcher. If you have real hard water, you could even think about a water softener, but I'll talk about that later. I have switched to hypoallergenic laundry detergent, hypoallergenic soap. I use just regular shampoo, it doesn't cause issues. And I use regular deodorant, although I have used a hypoallergenic detergent in the past, deodorant in the past, but that doesn't seem to have a major factor for me personally. So basically, I don't put anything on my skin except Eucerin calming cream and hypoallergenic soap. That's all. I don't use any other creams or anything else. I don't do any recreational drugs. I don't drink alcohol. I don't smoke cigarettes. I don't smoke dope. I don't take pop pills or do anything else like that. So that's basically everything I do. I'll also run a humidifier during the winter whenever it changes seasons and it gets a little cooler. I'll run a humidifier in my room at night and sometimes in the house throughout the day just to help keep the humidity levels higher. And I usually do lotion twice a day in the winter when my skin gets drier. So I'll do it once in the morning, lather up with lotion, and once either midday or at night. And so that's it. I do the diet, I do the exercise, I do the hypoallergenic products, and the supplements that I mentioned. That's the gist of it right there. So if you want to try those things, always talk to your doctor first for each thing, the diet, exercise, and so forth. It took about 3 to 5 weeks, and by the grace of God, I figured that out. Now, if you're watching this video and you're wondering, I don't know what to do, please help me, I'm desperate. I get a lot of posts like that on the forum. The only thing I know to tell you is what I'm about to tell you. And this summarizes all the information I know about this disorder and all the tips and advice that I can give you about it. So if you kind of just imagine that you're in the room with me right now, what I'm about to tell you is what I would tell you if you came up to me personally and asked for my help. The first thing I would tell you to do is to always talk to a doctor first before you do anything. The second thing is I would tell you to pray. And, I believe in the power of prayer. I know some people don't share my beliefs in life, but I believe in the power of prayer. I never gave up. I know that prayers aren't always answered in our own timing as we would like or in the way that we would like, but I do feel like my prayers were answered. The third thing I would tell you to do is start looking at your diet immediately. And watch that diet video I put out there, or read on my website, or buy the book which talks about it. And begin to examine your diet, make a diary, of your food intake and how certain foods agree with you and whether your hives are improving, and if any foods cause you an allergic reaction and so forth. If you get stomach cramps, if you notice twitchy eye, if you get a lot of canker sores in your mouth, if you get a headache after eating certain foods, any of those things, feel very lethargic, tired after eating a certain food, that could indicate that your body has an allergic response to that food. And the diet thing does take a while. It takes about 3 to 5 weeks to notice once you're on a hypoallergenic diet to see if that's going to make your hives more bearable or even eliminate them. The next thing I would recommend is to cut out any recreational drugs and alcohol. And the reason I say that is because one of the things that I learned with this disorder is that my health is fragile and I'm not going to have this body forever. I have this one body in life and I want to take care of it because I was healthy one day and then the next day I had hives for over a decade, and I don't want to bring upon myself some health disorder. And smoking, drinking alcohol, marijuana, all these things used long term, there's ample medical research studies out there to show some of the damage that they can cause to your body. And anyway, they may contain chemicals that can make your hives worse. And a quick example is alcohol. Most people, when they're drunk, they notice that they don't feel the symptoms, probably because they're so disoriented. But whenever the next day or two, their hives can get dramatically worse. So that's something that you don't want to be taking alcohol or consuming alcohol, because that could be having an effect on your hives. The next thing is I would recommend cutting out any unnecessary supplements. If you're taking a protein powder, if you're taking just some health store supplement that you decided on a whim to take, if you are putting anything in your mouth that you really don't need in your mouth and your doctor's not telling you to do it, always check with the doctor before you just abruptly stop some medication. But I would recommend you cut out any supplements whatsoever. Another thing is contraceptives. Some women with birth control, a few actually have mentioned that they think that it could have something to do with their hives, or that their hives got worse once they went on birth control. Another type of contraceptive you want to watch out is the IUDs. There has been one research, or not research, but I think it was just listed in a book on hives that I came across online, where a woman had a copper IUD. She was having cholinergic urticaria symptoms. When that IUD was removed, they found out she had a copper sensitivity to it, and that's what was causing her hives, and her hives got better after that was removed. So anything that messes with your hormone levels, like a contraceptive, or anything with metal or artificial in your body, you always kind of want to think in your mind, okay, I might want to get this out just in case that has an effect on my hives. Again, the probiotics, multivitamins, and supplements that I talked about, you may want to introduce those. Talk to your doctor. Vitamin B6 is one that some people have reported helped them. I never really took B6 that much. I did try it for a time. It didn't help me, so I cut it out. But I take a multivitamin, vitamin D3 sometimes, a calcium supplement sometimes, and I take probiotics sometimes. Cut out any lotions, creams. You know, if you're putting wrinkle cream on your face, excuse me, or anything like that, try to cut that out for at least a month or so. Cut out detergents, soaps, and switch to hypoallergenic if you can. And I talk about all those products. If you go to my website, cholinergicurticaria.net/products, I have a list of hypoallergenic products and recommended products that you could look at in detail, and I have a video of that as well. Make your house dust-free and allergy-free as possible. If you have pets, I would recommend keeping them off the bed, because they'll go out and roll around in grass and ragweed and pollen or whatever outside, and they come in and bring it in your house. I'd recommend maybe keeping them in another room to sleep and cleaning your house frequently. You might want to get a hypoallergenic furnace filter or heat pump filter, whatever you want to call it. Do the dust mite proof bedding. The lotion that you may want to try is something like Eucerin Calming Cream. That's the kind I use. I have no affiliation with the company, but a lot of people on Amazon.com have rated this really well for conditions like eczema and hives and skin conditions. It won't cure your hives, but what it will do is it will keep your skin generally in really good shape. And obviously, if you ever have a rash or anything from that lotion, stop using it, but it works well with me. I use a humidifier, so you may want to try a humidifier. And that's especially important in the winter months, or if you live in a really cold climate, to help put some moisture back in the air so your skin doesn't dry out as much. And I do remember one person one time, as sort of a form of sweat therapy that they figured out, was they would run a humidifier at night and turn a heater up in their room and make it quite hot to where they would sweat, and they would sweat throughout the night. And by doing this regularly, it was sort of a form of sweat therapy aside from the exercise or sauna treatment, and they were able to use that. But to keep that humidifier to keep your skin moisturized would be probably a good idea. Shower head filter and water filter. I've already talked about that. I would recommend you do that. You don't know what's in your water. I recently got a letter from my water company stating that they found excess levels of a type of gas produced from chlorine that can cause cancer if you drink it over so many years. You never know what's in your water, so I think it's always a great idea to have some kind of filtration. And you may want to consider a water softener if you have very hard water or a lot of minerals in your water. A water softener can help take those out. Those are a little bit pricey, but the shower head filters are pretty inexpensive. Next, after you're kind of going down the list and trying some of those things, cutting things out, trying to get rid of anything that could be causing you issues, you might want to talk to your doctor about beginning sweat therapy and an exercise program. Again, exercise is not only going to help you reduce inflammation, but if you can get the sweat out of your pores, it can help sort of maintain that flow of sweat through your body so that you won't have hives every time you get hot. Now, as I've said before in the exercise video, you don't want to do this if you have other type of physical urticarias. If you have cold urticaria and cholinergic urticaria, it may not work out well for you. If you have a very severe case of hives, it may be very difficult for you to break a sweat. And I give you a couple strategies that you can try if you have a moderate case, but watch out if you have a severe case. If you ever have a history of anaphylactic shock, or if you ever feel tightening in your throat or you can't breathe as well, then that's dangerous for you and I wouldn't recommend exercising. And I recommend you always have someone with you and talk to your doctor about an EpiPen. That's a shot you can give if you ever have an allergic reaction. So play it safe if you try the exercise method. I would recommend losing weight. Again, it gets back to the visceral fat thing that I talked about earlier. If you're carrying around excess visceral fat that secretes hormones that causes inflammatory response in your body, then that could make your hives a little bit worse. So try to get on a healthy diet, a healthy exercise program, and stay that way if you can. And I know it's hard for some people, but do your best with it. And a lot of people have reported that when they lose weight, their hives get a little better. I've already mentioned before a documentary, Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, where this guy goes around trying these juice sort of diets. A man with a hives condition actually got better when he went on that diet, and he lost a lot of weight. So those are the things you can try that doesn't really require putting medicines in your body aside from the supplements, but it doesn't require putting medicines in your body. And I always try to go the most healthy route as possible, because there's so many side effects with these medicines these days. If that doesn't work, if you've tried that for a month, you've tried diet, you've tried exercise, you've allergy proofed everything, maybe tried the sweat therapy, maybe tried everything I just mentioned, you're still struggling, your hives are bad, you can begin to talk to a doctor about some of the prescription-based treatments. Now, most of these I'm not really a big fan of, and I made a decision even when my hives were severe that because of some of the side effects associated with these, that it simply wasn't worth it for me. I wasn't willing to try things that could maybe cause cancer or things down the line, just an attempt to relieve my hives a little bit in the present. So that's what I decided back then. You can make that decision yourself, but one thing that I would recommend that's relatively harmless is antihistamines, and that's usually the first line of treatment anyway for hives if you go to a doctor. Some of the antihistamines, there's two types, H1 and H2. H1 antihistamines are going to be Zyrtec, Allegra, Benadryl, Claritin, and ones like hydroxyzine, doxepin, and ones like antihistamines like that. Hydroxyzine and doxepin are prescription based. They tend to be a little stronger, so you can try those, but I would check with your doctor, start with the over-counters first. The thing you got to keep in mind with antihistamines is everyone reacts differently. Some people like Zyrtec on the form and get some benefit from it. Some people like Allegra, some people like hydroxyzine, and so forth. It's going to be different. They won't help everyone, but it's going to vary. Some people can get quite a bit of relief, whereas others get almost no relief. So it's just something you have to try, and I would recommend going down the line, trying different ones and see how your body reacts to them. Another thing you can do is you can take those H2 antihistamines, which is like Zantac or Pepcid, and you can combine those with an H1 antihistamine sometimes for a stronger effect. Now, when you do that, it can be dangerous, and you don't want to do that without talking to a doctor. I only did that maybe 3 to 5 times in my life. It's probably quite dangerous if you do it long term, I would imagine. And antihistamines in themselves can have some side effects such as drowsiness, nausea, stomach pain, headaches, dry mouth, dry eyes, and so forth. So those are some things you want to keep in mind with that. The other things on this list, I'm not a huge fan of, but I'll mention them just for the sake of mentioning them. But you could look into danazol. It's an anabolic steroid. You could look at corticosteroids. They reduce inflammation in your body. Beta blockers, UVB therapy. That's where you go to an actual sort of a tanning bed in a sense, but it's special UV light. And that's supposed to help with actually just getting that ultraviolet light, can help sometimes reduce histamine and so forth in your body. And that can actually help to reduce symptoms of hives and allergic disorders. Anti-immunoglobulin E therapy, that's something that sometimes some articles suggest could be, it reduces your immune system, but some articles suggest that there could be a higher risk for cancer if you take that, because IgE plays a role in cancer. So if you reduce that, the reasoning is that it could increase your chance for cancer. That's not something I personally was ever willing to try. A couple of people have tried it and didn't find a benefit from it, but it has been used in some cases to treat this disorder. Singulair is sometimes used, and that may be used with antihistamines or other things to try to keep the body from breaking out in hives as much as possible. One person on the forum talked about that. If you go and search on the site, cholinergic.net, you can see what the discussion was about any of these topics, by the way. Hormone or thyroid therapy, and that's in the cases where you have an underactive thyroid or overactive thyroid or whatever. The idea is that if you treat it, that maybe your hives will get better. One or two people have mentioned that, but I don't think that's the cause for most people with this type of hives, but that's something you can always look into. So that's just the list of medicinal treatments that you can try. Again, most of them have side effects or things that even when my hives were severe, I was like, I would just rather have hives and pray that things get better one day and keep trying other things that are more natural rather than jump in and do some of these things that could cause some serious side effects or increase my risk for cancer or so forth. So that pretty much sums up, that's all the advice I could give you. I know that it's really hard dealing with this, and I just would want to say to you not to lose hope. I know that as you go day by day, sometimes it feels like it's never going to get better. You can go through depression. You feel like you have to sacrifice your career, your life. And I certainly felt that way, but you're not alone. I've been there. So many people on the forum have been there. So just try to have that positive attitude. I want to make another video trying to encourage you and trying to give you some of my advice on overcoming depression and negative thinking that you can get into that pattern with this disorder really easily. On top of that, I have the book. The book's based on the website and the videos. They all kind of work together. The videos are good because you can just sit back and watch and hear things from my perspective. The book's good because you can just quickly flip through and reference all this stuff that I've talked about, and sometimes I go into a little more detail in the book. And then the website's good because you can go on there and search and see other people's perspective, and you can share your own story as well. I hope that helps you. I'm praying that this video somehow helps you overcome your hives. Hang in there. Don't give up hope, even if you've had this for several years. Thank you so much for watching, and God bless.